Welcome back to Confessions of a Recruiter with Blake and Declan. We are on a global mission to build the world's largest community of recruiters so we can all connect and succeed together.
That's right. If you want to check out more of Confessions of a Recruiter, jump onto confessions.tv, subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, access merch, and if you want to chat to us directly, join our Discord at XR House with the links below. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Confessions. We're taking a deeper dive with Trigsy after our Confessions Live night. Wasn't that just awesome?
It was fantastic. I don't hang around with recruiters very often, and so it was great to be in a room with so many young, bright-eyed people who were just so excited about their fantastic careers in recruitment.
And mate, just there was a highlight of that night, obviously your presence and the whole night, but there was one gentleman that asked a really good question about having a GM in his back pocket.
Yes, mate, this is the talk. You might not remember this because this might not be a significant moment for you, but It was for Brian and my team.
Okay.
This has been the running joke since Confessions Live. Now, I don't know if you remember, but at the end we took some questions.
Yeah.
And in my team, I got a guy called Brian. He does like industrial recruitment. And he had a question for you. And the question was, and he let in with this. It was so funny. He let in with, yeah, I've got a question for Richard. And you just, you sat there and you were ready for the question. He goes, so mate, don't know how to say this, but I've got a GM in my back pocket. What should I do with him?
He was the one that wanted to float the candidate. Yeah, right.
And your advice was, oh, mate, you don't float those kind of guys. Maybe you just do an intro for free or something. And he was like, oh, okay. And you basically told him just to like get rid of him and float him for free and just do the right thing and introduce him or something. And anyway, so that was like one of the highlights in my team at Vendito's night, because Brian just like awkwardly asking you what to do with the GM in his back pocket. And you know what? Before jumping on this podcast, so my team know I'm catching up with you tonight as well, I've got Amy going, Blake, can you speak to Trigsy about this candidate that I've got? He's pretty much a CEO. Trigsy can place him and we'll do a 50-50. And I'm like, oh, mate, I don't know. I'll have a chat to him. And then I'm on the way out, and then Brian's like, hey, Blake, I'm looking at a couple of Trigsy's advertised roles. I think he might have someone for this GM that I had in my back pocket. I was like, all right, guys, let's just settle down a little bit, eh? So you're pretty much the go-to. As soon as a GM or an MD or a CEO is interested in changing jobs, everyone starts thinking that they should send the candidate to you for a fitty-fitty. So, mate, it was a pretty fun night.
It was a really fun night, and especially seeing them so excited about $100 or whatever it was. Yeah. And then at the end, it's like, who are we giving this last $100 to? And there was quite a frenzy of excitement.
There was. No one actually got it. I actually didn't give it to anyone. I was like, no, I'm over this. No one gets the 100. But, mate, thanks for jumping on again, because we had a lot of really awesome feedback from that night, both from the quality of the content and just the vibe of the room and everyone getting along and just enjoying each other's company, because, not many recruiters really get into a room with only the purpose of just catching up. Usually there's always an agenda. There's bloody Seek trying to flick you more job ads, or, there's some sort of vendor trying to sell the recruiter something. So it's always good having everyone in the same room. What was your kind of key takeaways from that night? I know you said that it was good seeing all those kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tail recruiters. Do you feel like the recruiters coming through now that are in those younger generations, are they different to how they were when you first started? What's changed since when you started getting into recruitment to the recruiters that you're meeting now?
Again, I don't really hang around with recruiters. So I recently, I was out one night with Paul and Cassandra, who you guys know. From Lyme. We'd been out and we'd had a very long and enjoyable lunch. And then we went across to Mr. Percival's, that pub. And there were a whole bunch of recruiters there that Paul and Cassandra knew, but I didn't know any of them. And everybody was just talking it up and how awesome they were going and how much they were billing. And it reminded me of how recruiters just, I'm not saying in the main they're dishonest, but there's a very sort of, it's this mask of I'm hanging around with other recruiters. I can't tell people what it's really like, know. So I was listening to all these guys talking, and I was just so amused because I remember many years ago I was at an RCSA conference on Hamilton Island, and my business partner at the time was giving a presentation, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's the most amazing time in life," and it was right in the GFC. And we were having a shitty time. And I was thinking, these guys are just totally full of crap. But nobody was prepared to really be vulnerable. So are recruiters more vulnerable now? I don't know. I think, the recruitment industry has suffered from bringing people in and blue skying them. Somebody's an engineer, but they don't really want to be an engineer anymore, or a lawyer or an accountant. And so they say, "Oh, wow, you're a lawyer. Why don't you recruit lawyers? It'll be awesome. You'll make so much money and you'll change people's lives." But of course, those people come in typically earlier in their career, so let's say maybe in their 20s, and then they get in and they go, "Wow, I didn't realize this is actually a sales job." And so there's this initial sort of gung-ho, almost naivety that gets beaten out of people pretty quickly. So whether it's still like that or not, again, I don't know, because I work in the executive space, the executive retained space. So all the people that I employ are typically very experienced recruiters who've been in the industry for long enough, as compared to perhaps, who a generalist contingent recruiter would hire. It's interesting, at your event, a few of the people came up to me and talked to me, and they said the same thing that was true for me when I went and worked for Hudson. Come in, we're going to give you a really warm desk, and then you arrive and the desk is completely cold. The training is non-existent, and basically it's like, just get on the phone and ring people and ask to do their recruitment. That doesn't seem to have changed. There were people at your event and they were telling me that was their experience that they're living right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, we have our opinions on, advertising a hot desk full of all these roles and clients that you can just walk into. We think it's all pretty much full of shit, really, because you can't just roll in and just have all these relationships from day one, because it takes a while to get them
especially
going.
with perm, because you can't sell a perm business. So how could you sell a perm desk on a micro level?
Yeah.
For someone to walk into and take over.
Yeah. So on top of that, look, we would love to be able to get a little deeper on how you do things, because you mentioned a couple of really interesting things on that night. One of them is your fee sizes, huge, really good. The next was your kind of BD strategy. And one of them was your retained approach.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me here if I'm wrong, but on the night, did you say that you charge 100% of the fee up front?
Okay, so what we did when we started our business back in 1st of February 2009, right in the middle of the GFC, is we wanted to compete with the big global search brands. So there's 5 brands, they call them the Shrek brands: Spencer Stewart, Heidrick Struggles, Russell Reynolds, Egon Zehnder, Korn Ferry. And, they've been around for a long time. They've got 74 offices in 47 countries. They typically only get out of bed for jobs probably paying 400 plus. Their fees are typically 25 to 40% of package.
Wow.
Prior to, a few years ago, prior to COVID, I was in conversations with them, the principals in Australia, and at that time their average recruitment fee was $140,000. And they're not in Brisbane, because they feel Brisbane is just not a big enough market for them. So we said, okay, I'd come from Davidson's. I was running 7 of their recruitment divisions there. I sat on their board, and I was a huge proponent of headhunting. And so I said, why don't we start a recruitment business that is a research-based search firm that offers a very comparable service? And obviously, LinkedIn has made headhunting and search much easier than it used to be, and we can talk about that if you want. But instead of being 25 to 35% of package, 15% of package, instead of only wanting to work on jobs sort of 400 plus, to offer search for any level of leadership role, because again, in my opinion, you will get a much better result through headhunting rather than just putting it out on Seek and praying the right person applies. And then being in Brisbane, we were servicing, the market that largely the big Shrek firms weren't interested in. So that's how we started. And, fairly traditional, typical, a third, a third, a third. So a third of the fee at commencement, a third of the fee on delivery of shortlist, and then the balance on placement. Then, and not really telling any tales out of school here, because if you looked at my website, you could see all this anyway. So in around 2013, we realised that a lot of companies were building out an internal recruitment team, and they were saying, look, you've got LinkedIn recruiter licenses now, so what do you need to use external recruiters for? We can do it all ourselves. But of course, internal recruiters often can't generate the quality or quantity of talent that they need. So we said, well, rather than competing with internal recruitment, let us complement them. So we launched what we call a headhunted shortlist solution, where we will run a headhunting process up to the delivery of a interviewed shortlist, hand it to the client, and then they close out the balance. And in that instance, our fee is paid prior to delivery of shortlist. So, so we will start work, and then we make a commitment. We'll deliver shortlist within 20 working days, but we're retained exclusively, and our fee is paid before delivery of shortlist. And why is that good? Why is that? Okay, it's obviously a smaller fee, but how often as a contingent recruiter do you work on a job, you get all the way to preferred candidate, and then the client says, oh, we've just had a brain explosion, we've decided we're not going to proceed with the role.
Yeah.
Or we found an internal candidate, or somebody's appeared on our radar, or, the hiring manager has gone off the reservation. If you're a contingent recruiter, it's like, wow, well, I've just lost my entire fee. Us, we go, well, we've delivered you shortlist, you've paid us, so our commitment to you is not to place the role, you are retaining us to deliver you a shortlist.
That's really interesting. Have you heard of that before?
No. What were the pieces that happened for that to become a part of your service?
Well, because I would talk to executive line managers, and they would go, Richard, with all due respect to my internal recruitment colleagues, our internal recruitment, they just can't give us any good candidates, but I'm precluded from engaging you. I'm not allowed to retain you. I have to use internal recruitment. And so we would get this feedback over and over and over again. So we have one client we've done over 100 roles for in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
Wow.
Yeah, and so all under this arrangement.
So what is it? So you charge them a flat fee and you give them how many candidates?
We charge, it could be a percentage of salary or a flat fee, and we will give them the best shortlist that we can. We guarantee to deliver them a minimum of 3 candidates that they're delighted to interview, but it could be 8, it could be 12. The other thing is, if they hire more than one candidate, they don't pay us any further fees because we are being retained to deliver a shortlist. What they do with that shortlist is up to them.
Outcomes are relevant of the shortlist. It's just the shortlist that they're paying for. So a percentage of what would you charge to deliver them a shortlist?
In a headhunted shortlist solution, 7.5% a package.
Yep.
Of 7.5% of base salary package, there's a minimum fee level.
Or 7.5%.
7.5%.
Okay, so let's say I engage or I pitch someone 7.5% of the salary package. We'll get you a shortlist. What about the shortlist if they don't interview? Do they have to go to an interview, or is it like these are 3 candidates we've told about your position that they're interested?
Our commitment is we will deliver them a minimum of 3 candidates that they're delighted to interview. So if we deliver a shortlist and they say, well, of those we only want to interview 2, then we will continue to work until they get a 3rd.
Okay,
So
cool.
3 interviews
Mate,
organised.
That's pretty cool. So if they call these 3 candidates that they're delighted to interview, and the 3 candidates, what if are the 3 candidates interested in their job, or is it like these are 3 profiles?
Oh, no. We've fully interviewed them.
Okay.
So we've headhunted them.
Yeah.
We've screened them. We've presented the client with their CV, written report, and so the client is ready to bring them into their process.
Gotcha. Cool. Mate, this could be a really good a really good approach, because like, especially in industrial, mate, they're always like, oh, mate, send me candidates if you got a really good one, and then they just, for some reason, never go through with it. I think that would be really interesting. How did you...
I'll give you an analogy, and I don't know if I said this previously, so if I did, tell me now, shut up. But, in law, right, a lot of law firms have got mission-critical vacancies that they might have had for a long time. They want a property lawyer with 10 years' experience or whatever it is. And so I will say to them, I can headhunt from your direct competitors, and I will commit to you to deliver you a shortlist within 20 days that you're delighted to interview. And they'll say, oh yeah, Richard, we don't retain. And I'll say to them, a bit tongue-in-cheek, that's interesting because I just murdered my wife and I want to engage 5 lawyers to represent me, and whoever gets me the lowest sentence, I'll pay, and the rest of you work for free. Do you want to take on the job? And they go, no way. Why would we work for free? And I go, well, why would I work for free?
How did this even happen in recruitment? Because it, like you said, they all think it's crazy. Accountants are the same thing. Interior designers, any other professional service besides essentially real estate, to some extent, depending on the package.
Yep.
It's open slather, especially in commercial, not so much residential. Most of them get them exclusive. But yeah, do you know why or how the recruitment industry has been built that way?
Well, you'd have to go back and ask Mr. Savage, and ask
the Savage before him,
Morgan and Banks back in the day, because I think recruiters are crazy. I think if you work as a contingent recruiter, you're a moron.
We need to make sure we clip that one up.
Why would you? And this is the thing. Why would I invest time in delivering an outcome if I'm not going to be paid for it? As you say, if you're an architect, a lawyer, an engineer, any professional service, you're paid. But this is the way that 95% of our industry works.
So if you're we're speaking of 95% of the industry, but what steps would you put into place? Is it a fact of just going to clients, hey, we do retain? Is it meaning you have to get a pitch deck together, do it in person, pitch it, have a consistent process? Like, how would you go from being a contingent recruiter to start building value in retained? Is it a matter of just asking for it and putting it on your terms?
Yeah.
Or I think you've just got to have the balls, basically. You've got to ask for the business. But the downside of it, which we brought up the other day, was that you actually have to deliver. And so I think that there's a lot of recruiters who I know who prefer to work contingently because then they don't have that expectation on them.
There's no pressure.
So, yeah. So again, different horses, different courses, right? But, if I talk about sales, I always say to my team, when we sell, we have to sell like we are a specialist surgeon. So if you imagine, somebody comes to see a surgeon and the surgeon says, look, Fred, you've got cancer, and what we have to do is we have to follow this chemotherapy treatment and we need to operate to remove the tumour. And if you want me to do that for you, my fee's going to be $40,000. And then if the patient says, yeah, but doc, I've got this friend who lives in Mullumbimby, and they said that if I just dance around this maypole and say these 3 affirmations every day I'm going to heal myself and take these magic beans, then my cancer will be cured. So what does the surgeon doesn't say, oh, well, okay, what I'll do then instead, let me give you magic beans. and instead of charging you $40,000, I'll only charge you if your cancer is cured. The surgeon says, okay, cool, go and do that. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, come back and see me and I'll sort your cancer out. But recruiters, because recruiters are largely order takers rather than trusted advisors, they go to the client and they go, look, I'd love to work with you on a retained basis. Oh, we don't do retained. Oh, okay, well, I'll do contingent then. Or, our fees are 18% a package. Look, we only pay 12. And the best one, which are these big companies, okay, so we will pay you 45 days after end of the month that you put in your invoice, and if the candidate leaves within 6 months, you have to refund the fee. And recruiters go, okay. And I mean, I'm not talking your garden variety, mum and dad recruiters. Big recruitment companies sign those terms.
It wrecks the industry.
Why on earth would you do that?
I had a global valve company say the similar thing to me. Like, he's like, mate, why would I talk to you? I'm getting global, like from the big four, getting 10% fees. I'm like, are we already back at that stage where everyone's doing that again? And I didn't.
You know what? I've had that conversation recently over the last couple of weeks. Last year, anyone paid whatever recruitment fee to get someone. I feel like the last 3 to 6 months, all of a sudden, 10%, 12% is getting thrown around so much more now. I don't know why that is. So let me ask you this then. In your terms, do you just have retained fee? That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. And so...
it's obviously there's a bit more to it than that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, but fundamentally...
You have your logo.
Yeah, that's right. But fundamentally, it's like...
It's one rate.
If you want us to do a piece of work for you, this is how much it will cost. This is when you'll pay us. And if you don't want to sign that, then we just won't do business with you.
So what
just quickly. So that's it. That's easy. That's it now. But what was Arete like 15 years ago when you kicked it off? Did you just have these values and these principles doing it that way? Yep. So you just got to draw a line in the sand. You're going to miss out on the volume of job you used to, but they're essentially fake jobs because you're getting just contingent jobs.
Look, I mean, and this is without me being egotistical at all, but, I'm 55 years old. I've got a business degree. I've got an executive MBA. I was a C-suite executive. I've written a best-selling book. I'm an ambassador for the Brisbane Club. I value myself, right? I value myself to the point that I always say, look, if you want to work with me, you have to pay for it. That's fair enough, isn't it?
Well, what about the recruiters that don't have those degrees? How do they value themselves?
Work for somebody who does. A point that I made previously, I worked for Davidson Recruitment for 5.5 years. Bruce Davidson was my mentor, lawyer, run a very successful business, highly regarded in the industry, highly regarded in the business community. So people at that point, certainly, as I worked there over 5.5 years, it was more so, but they were retaining Bruce on the expectation that I would deliver, the promises made by Bruce. So a 22-year-old graduate out of university walking into a client with no recruitment experience and no credibility would find it very hard to demand to be retained. Yeah.
So what are the objections and how do you overcome them then when, and you gave us a couple of like examples before on what you would do and what you wouldn't do, etc. But if you were pitching into a new client, they said, look, we really want to work with you, we just can't do retained, or why would we do retained? Like have you got like a general line that you're like, look, XYZ is why you need to go retained?
Well, I suppose I just don't even entertain the conversation. We are a retained search firm. Companies who use search firms are used to retaining them. I do not compete against contingent recruiters. So my main competition is internal recruitment. But I suppose if I talk about why would a company retain? Well, you want a commitment that you're going to get to an outcome where you will have the best person offered successfully and take on the role. So if you want me to give you that level of commitment, you have to retain me.
Yeah. Sounds pretty straightforward, eh?
Just stick to your guns.
Stick to your guns.
Well,
like sometimes, you mentioned before, like, some recruiters will be like, oh, go retain. They go, we don't go retain. They go, okay, go contingent. That's probably where we're at Bandito. So what you're talking about is ringing true for me for sure. So our general pitch though is not that to get retained. I'd say maybe 30 to 40% of our roles are retained. Mm-hmm. Maybe the other 60% are contingent. Mm-hmm. Generally, we pitch retained and say, look, contingent, we're working your role against all these other roles. You can only get a certain amount of love and attention for the day. But with retained, firstly, we focus much more stringently on making sure we deliver your result within a shorter time frame. Usually we've got 2 recruiters that will kind of simultaneously work your role and give it more attention and love and urgency than any other roles that come in. If you are contingent and a retained role comes in, well, then you go back at the line and then we focus on our retained role. So if this is an important role, if it's an urgent role, you want it filled with the right person fast and you don't want to be bumped off the priority list because someone else is coming in retained, this is why you should do it. Mm-hmm. And 50% of the time, maybe they'll go, yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's do that. The other 50% is like, nah, you just send me a candidate. I'd rather pay you more. So our retained rate is 15%. Half up front, half on contract acceptance. Mm-hmm. And then our contingent rate is 22% any salary package on contract acceptance.
Right.
What's your feedback on that?
Look,
you're a moron.
I mean, at the end of the day, what works best for your business? If you are making a substantive number of placements at 22%, that justify having a higher volume of work, knowing you'll only place 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 or whatever it might be, fantastic. I just choose not to do it. It's like I know recruitment companies that have contracted desks because they've got a recurring income model, have a sales value, but I don't do that, right? It's I look at, my friends Paul and Cassandra with Lime, their entire business is contracting and their business is worth way more money than mine is. But that's, why do some people choose to play rugby league and another person choose to play soccer? I don't know.
Yeah.
As a business owner, you need to think about, well, what is going to get you to your goals? If you are recruiting contingently, you probably need more recruiters.
Yep.
If you're recruiting contingently, you probably need to pay lower base salaries to your staff.
Yep.
Right? So I pay very good salaries. I have a very small team. But, my average recruitment delivery person is billing $600 a year. In fact, if they're not billing $600, they're not right for my business.
Okay. And so let's actually talk about that, because before we jumped on the potty, you were talking about you doing BD, what your billings were, and that you are mainly winning business, not in the traditional smashing out cold calls sense, but more strategically because you're a more mature business and you don't have to kind of do what a new recruiter has to do. But let's walk through kind of what your strategy is then for BD and how that works in a business of six recruiters. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like for you?
Right. Well, I suppose my background, I came from a strong sales background. So when I came into recruitment, the first thing I think I realised was if I wanted to be better than 9 out of 10 recruiters, I only had to do one thing: return people's phone calls. And the second thing was, it was very easy to be incredibly reactive and get to the end of the week and go, man, I've been so busy, but I don't feel that I've actually achieved anything. because a candidate rings you, oh, can you give me feedback on this job? No sooner have you hung up than another candidate's rung you and 5 have emailed you and a client wants you to call them back. And so BD often gets, nice to do, but relegated to, I'll do that when I have time. This is why I don't believe in 360-degree recruitment, right? I have a separation between BD and delivery. But anyway, we can talk about that later. And so what I would do, and I've continued to do, I have 2 hours in my diary every day, which is purely for BD.
Wow. Even after 15 years of running a business.
After 15 years.
That's
2
what
hours
everyone needs to hear. And
And
what
so,
part of the day?
look, it depends, and I'm happy to move it if I need to accommodate a meeting or whatever. But so I used to know, again, this is pre-starting my business, when I was working, I would know, okay, if I not make 25 attempted calls a week, if I have 25 conversations a week, that will turn into a minimum of 5 meetings. If I have 5 meetings a week, that will turn into a minimum of 3 proposals. If I have 3 proposals a week, that will turn into a minimum of 1 job. Remembering, only retained. Even prior to starting my own business, when I was at Davidson's, I only worked retained.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I was a bit of a lone wolf in that regard, but that was again, my values, right? So you need to know your ratios. If I want to bill 50,000 a month, I need to win X number of jobs. That means X number of proposals. That means X number of visits. That means X number of calls. Of course, then I started my own business, and kind of all of those ratios got blown out because it was suddenly the GFC. So you might have to have 50 conversations to win a job, whereas previously it was 25 conversations to win a job. So it's not something that's set in stone. You're constantly testing and measuring. But even now, I will endeavour to have a minimum of 25 conversations a week, right? But I'm not ringing up, the HR manager and saying, oh, hi, Mary, I'm Richard from Arete and we've never spoken before. Can I come and meet with you because, I want to do your recruitment, right? Because that's what a lot of these HR managers are getting 40 plus of those phone calls a week. So they get very jaded and very resistant. So it's thinking about what can I do more intelligently. So, for example, I talk to a lot of CEOs who are actively looking for board roles. And through talking to them and assisting them with their strategy to either get a new CEO gig or board positions, it gives me an opportunity then to say, oh, by the way, can I tell you a little bit about how we operate? We've got this these different solutions. So I use the candidate always. Again, a lot of recruiters pay lip service to today's candidates, tomorrow's client, but then they treat candidates like crap. Whereas I've always felt, obviously not every candidate, if the salesperson for the steel fabrication company in Rockley rings me and says, oh, Richard, can I have a meeting with you? No. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because I don't have the time. But hey, let me give you a free copy of my book. Let me give you 3 free webinars. Let me invite you to come to my monthly Ask Me Anything webinar. So how can I give them as much value as I possibly can without taking up my time and actually having a meeting with them? But when the deputy chair of Australia Post says, Richard, can I have a chat to you about my board career? Of course I'm going to invest time in talking to that person, because then I can leverage that off that into being introduced to the companies that they're on the board of, for example. So I still do the same thing. I just don't do it in the way that I did when I was 35.
How would you scale that back to someone recruiting like the level below?
Yeah. Is this all specific to C-suite, or can you replicate this process with...
I imagine it would stop at say, a state manager.
State managers that look after a region, mid-level.
I mean, I've never been somebody that's been invested in talking to head of recruitment or even HR, because largely they're not invested in me, right? So I will invest with the hiring manager. So, for example, when I first started my recruitment career, way back in the day, recruiting in the building products industry, I would be talking to the people who were the key hiring managers for the roles that I was recruiting. I was not talking to HR. Yeah. But it's no different.
So still be GM, CEOs.
Well, whatever is relevant to the recruiter. The thing about it is that everybody has aspirations for a better job. Everybody wants to know what's going on in the industry. Everybody wants to be invited to participate in interesting things. So it's about saying rather than ringing them from the perspective of what's in it for me as a recruiter, it's how can I give them so much value that the law of reciprocity will be that they want to reciprocate by giving me their recruitment. So, for example, this morning I ran a breakfast for 11 CEOs at the Brisbane Club. I do that every month. I run a networking drinks function every couple of months at the Brisbane Club. I run the Brisbane Long Lunch Club. I do a whole heap of these things to build community, because one of the best ways to build community is to introduce people to other people that they wouldn't meet otherwise. So again, coming back to the thing you were laughing about at the beginning, look, I've got this general manager. Okay, who can I introduce that person to that may be able to assist them in their career without any expectation that I'm getting a fee out of it?
Need to bring that long-term thinking back to recruitment. Yep.
Well, if you want to succeed in the industry and you want to have a long career, you definitely do. If you're a highly transactional recruiter, then you don't need to do that. But and again, there's nothing wrong with recruiters who choose to be that. It's just I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to actually have relationships that are meaningful and where these people truly regard me as their trusted advisor and friend, rather than, he's just that recruiter that is constantly badgering me for assignments.
What about like KPIs though? We spoke about KPIs really briefly, and you mentioned that KPIs are really important. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming to be able to track whether you're doing the work and if the work is working, and if you need to tweak something a part of the process to get a better result, you can dial up the submissions or work on a better interview ratio or something like that. But what are the KPIs that you're focused on or that you've implemented in your team that you feel works best?
Well, obviously, I don't have 360-degree recruiters. So I have what I call senior partners who are account managers, and then associate partners who do the candidate engagement and delivery work. So they have different there are different expectations in terms of what they do and their KPIs. What I find, and from a leadership point of view, is if you let the person set their own KPIs, then they've taken ownership and accountability for it, and then it's much easier to manage them to those. So what I learned many years ago, what you might say to a recruiter on your team, okay, so Mary, let's imagine it's 6 months from now. Describe your desk. Tell me, what would you love it to look like? What would you like your business to be? Well, I'd love to be regarded as the number one logistics recruiter in Brisbane, and I'd love to bill, $50,000 a month, and I'd love to be invited to speak at events or whatever it is. Okay? So okay, great. So let's imagine now it is 6 months from now, and that is what your desk looks like. You're billing 600 and da-da-da-da. What did you need to do in order to get you from where you are today to that space, your preferred reality in 6 months? Now, she may say, I don't know, I need to make 5 phone calls a week. And then as the manager, you would go, well, actually, I don't think 5 phone calls a week is going to cut it. Or I need to do 2 proposals a month, right? But more often than not, the recruiter will actually set themselves higher KPIs than you probably would otherwise. Well, I need to have 100 phone calls a week, and I need to do 12 client meetings a week. And you go, okay, well, you may be perhaps you're being a bit too ambitious. So let's scale it back a little bit, and then you bring it back to what in your mind as their leader is the right numbers. Okay, so now that you've determined that that's what you want, are you okay for me to hold you to account to that? Well, they can hardly say no, right? Because they were the person that proposed, this is my preferred reality, and this is how I'm going to get to my preferred reality. So then you meet with them. So I go, okay, great. So every meeting that we have every week, the first thing we're going to do is do the numbers. And, I've had many instances where a person will show up and I say, okay, great. So Mary, you said you were going to do, 5 client meetings this week. How many did you do? 1. Well, why 1? Oh, the cat got stuck in the tree and, my car fell down the drain or whatever it is. Okay, cool. But you're still committed to 5. Yeah, still committed to 5. Okay, great. Next week, how many meetings? 2. Okay, well, what's going on? And very quickly they'll realise and self-determine, I'm not cutting that. So it's a pretty easy conversation to have with them to go, look, either you're not doing the job or you just think that I'm an idiot. Which one is it? Because you're a great person, Mary, but maybe you're just not the right person to work in this business. And Mary says, yeah, I'm probably not the right person to work here. My last general manager was terminated for that reason. But often, or more often, you'll say, okay, Mary, so how many client meetings do you do? 8. Because they know they want to impress you. I did 8. That's awesome. And let's look at what that's turned into. Well, it's turned into 3 proposals, and instead of billing 50 this month, I'm going to bill 70. What it is, you need to have a culture where you balance performance and love. If you love your team too much without having any accountability, they become soft and don't perform. If it's all about accountability, but you don't love them, then they become brittle and they leave. So true leadership in any business, but particularly in recruitment, certainly managing salespeople and so on, is about how do you just maintain accountability and love so that people want to please you, because ultimately through pleasing you, they're getting the preferred reality outcomes they want for themselves. Yeah. So I'm actually just about to finish writing a book. It's about how to attract and retain top talent. And this is really part of retaining good people.
I love that. That's awesome. That was a really interesting kind of insight to. It's something that just makes a lot of sense when you say it out loud. It's like, oh yeah, obviously, but it's probably not something that makes sense unless someone's actually telling it to you.
How do you show love to your staff?
Well, my nickname's Big Love Trigsy. Well, look,
does that just get involved in their personal lives?
I think it's one of the great things to do, and again, is to be asking the people in your team, you obviously work for me, but there's plenty of options you could go and work for. I mean, God, you could go and work as a recruiter. You could pick up a job anywhere, right? So what are the 3 reasons that you continue to work for me? And mostly, people will have very different reasons. In my instance, a lady in my team has been with me for 6 months. She said, I love the variety of the work. I love the fact that I can earn what I want without selling. And I love the ability to work flexibly as it suits me to deliver. So what I need to do then, if that's what she loves and that's why she wants to continue to work for me, I need to make sure I give her that. But obviously, there has to be reciprocity. I can't only give her that if she's not giving me what I want, which are the fulfillment of the KPIs and ultimately, the work performance. I have a person in my team who is married with young kids, and her drivers are very different to another person in my team who wants to work really, really hard and earn enough money to buy a house next year. So I can't think that it's just a one-size-fits-all. I need to ensure that, each individual's needs are being met, but at the end of the day, ultimately it's my business, and I have to make sure my needs are being fulfilled first, because otherwise there's nothing to give. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So you've got a delivery team and you've got a BD team. Is that right?
Candidate.
Not so much a BD team. In fact, I was thinking about the numbers for you. So I'm the BD guy.
Yeah.
And then I have somebody who's...
So we got Big Love Trigsy at the top,
That's
doing
right.
all the BD.
Yeah.
What comes next?
And then as I win at work, I hand it over to a senior partner who's responsible for managing that account, ensuring the client is delighted, ensuring the job is delivered at the right quality, at the right time. And then I have what I call associate partners who are write the ad, field the candidate inquiries, do the research, do the headhunting, do the interviews. So there's a clear delineation between client-facing and candidate-facing.
Hey, just wanted to jump in here. We got a confessions hotline, so give us a call, send us a text if you want to share any juicy stories, or even just ask a question that's been on your mind, because we'd love to hear from you. The phone number is 0485 865 483. Enjoy the rest of the show.
If the client facing is not going out and getting their own business,
they are doing account management. So, for example, I'll bring in a job.
Yeah.
I'll bring in a new client, and I'll say to the client, okay, great. We've just picked up a role. For example, we've just picked up a role recently to recruit a CFO for an ASX-listed technology company. So I won the work. I introduced my account manager and my delivery person, my senior partner and my associate partner. They fulfill the job. Moving forward, it's my account manager's job to continue to maintain the relationship with that employer.
Okay, so their responsibilities, and tell me here if I'm wrong, would be to maintain a good relationship, find other hiring managers in that business where they might have more jobs to fill. Is that am I picking this? Am I picking up what you're putting down? Or?
It could be if they're. We don't typically work. Most of our clients are what I would call medium-sized enterprise. We have 3 ASX Top 100 clients now, and very much in that instance, we need to get across all the various division leads and so on. But in most of our clients, we'll be dealing directly with the owner or the CEO. So there's no need to go and talk to all the hiring managers because we're talking to the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it's a big company, pick a name, any name, Rio Tinto, for example, obviously we're not talking to the CEO of Rio Tinto.
Yeah.
We're talking to, either functional leads or whatever it might be.
Okay, so if the senior partner then is purely responsible for looking after the client and the associate partner does the interviews, shortlist the candidates, the associate partner goes to the senior partner, goes, hey, here's 3 candidates that we found that are really, really good. The senior partner goes, great, maybe has a chat to them quickly and then goes, here are 3 candidates that we found, let's organise interviews, and then it's the senior partner's role to continue that.
Correct.
And so how many would they be able to manage then if they're not technically out doing BD? Because that's like 50% of the job really if someone is just client facing, 50% of the time they're trying to get BD and 50% of the time they're trying to look after the accounts. So if they've got a lot more time to account manage, I'm assuming they would have if they're not doing the BD, how many clients could they service at any one point?
I think that's I wouldn't necessarily know the answer to that, but it's substantial. Again, if you look at a 360-degree recruiter, I've got no work on. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Oh, shit, I've got all this work on. Deliver, deliver, deliver. Oh, I've got no work on. Hustle, hustle. So their billing cycle is up and down and up and down. To me, that's inefficient. If somebody is very good at client-facing and very good at building and maintaining those relationships, get them to do that. And then get people to do recruitment who don't like to sell. Because how many people are there who are recruiters who go, you know what, I just love doing the filling, but I hate all of the sales and the KPIs, and they just don't like that. I know that I'm very good at filling jobs, but I know that if I spent my time filling jobs, it would severely constrain the amount of client-facing work I could do. So why don't I just get the delivery team to look after the client so that I can be out shaking hands and kissing babies?
And do you ever feel like you can have too many jobs?
Yes. In fact, we're in that situation all the time. We've just had to hire another new person this week because we have too many jobs. But it's all retained.
So with your retain then, are you still doing a third?
If it's full service, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what would your expectations be on, did you ever hire rookie recruiters?
Never.
Look,
and it's a tough one because...
you have, though.
Oh, have I? I have, but it's very challenging, because whilst I think the actual methodology and functional requirements of being a recruiter are not really that challenging, the reality is it's a very nuanced job, right? As you guys would know, you've obviously been in recruitment for a long time. Obviously not, you started...
We're not up to Big Love Triggsy standards yet.
You started a lot younger than me. But, reading cues, like talking to... How do you encourage a reticent candidate to want to make an application? You're headhunting somebody. They're passive. How do you engage with them in a way that they're going to want to be part of the shortlist? When you're dealing with a client and the client has unrealistic expectations, how do you convince the client to change? I'll give you a direct example. So we're currently recruiting a cultural heritage manager for an Indigenous land council in Victoria. So they said, we want somebody who's headed a cultural heritage unit in an Indigenous community, and they must have Victorian experience because they have to understand the legislation. So we go, okay, great. So
pretty open brief, that.
Yeah. So this is why this is, if you're
you could send anyone there.
if you're taking a retainer, this is what it often is, right?
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people don't want to do it. So, we go out and attempt to headhunt. Now, these people have had this vacancy for over a year, right? They haven't been able to fill it. So they've given it to us. So we've now had sufficient conversations to be able to go back to the client and say, listen, the reality is, now don't forget we've already been paid, right?
The third up front or the 2/3 by this point? 1/3?
This is a headhunted shortlist solution.
Oh, okay, yep.
So we've been paid. We've presented 3 or 4 candidates. They haven't successfully hired from that. And so it's the ability to say to the client, well, look, what do you want to do? If you want, you can't, there's no 3 out of 3. So what are you prepared to compromise on? Now, that takes a lot of emotional intelligence and a lot of professional acumen, that as experienced recruiters, we probably do all the time without actually realising that that's what we do. A rookie recruiter, they wouldn't be able to do that.
No, it's like having your first client that has a bad industry reputation, and you don't know enough about it, and you've got to be the guy that goes in and tells them why they have a bad reputation. And I've done it before with a couple of people, and they're like, mate, no one's ever had the balls to tell us what you've just told us. Yep. And then the bond you get with them is next level. And then the roles become easier, you find better people. All of a sudden this stigma of them in the industry evaporates and you get a better relationship.
Well, again, if you take it back to other professional services, lawyers have to deliver bad news, doctors have to deliver bad news, architects have to say, listen, the house you want me to design, you just can't build that, mate. So, but recruiters, they would rather just not make the phone call. And clients, employers will say to me, even we've retained a recruiter to do this job, they haven't delivered a shortlist, and now we can't get them to return our phone calls. So, but hang on, you've paid them money, and they won't return your phone calls. Our industry, I regularly say I wouldn't trust 98% of recruiters to walk my dog, right? But there's no accreditation, there's no qualification, there's no barrier to entry, and a lot of recruitment companies, they allow these behaviours. I remember when I first got my job as a recruiter, I was actually told by my boss, and I won't mention his name because he's still a senior person in the recruitment industry, if you're doing a reference check and the referee says something bad, leave it out.
Yep.
Oh, I think every boss has said that.
Yeah, 100%. My boss told me that when I was first in recruitment. He was like, mate, if they say that, just fucking don't put it in, mate. You fluff it up a little bit. Make it sound a little better.
Re-ask the question in a different way. Yeah. Isn't this 101 recruitment? No, I'm joking.
But it's true, right?
Yep.
And the same person, he'd say to me, okay, when you're interviewing somebody, say, look, out of interest, any other jobs that you're in the mix for? And they'd say, oh, yeah, I'm currently being interviewed for the CFO of Arrow Energy. And then what you do is you contact Arrow and say, hey, listen, I understand you're recruiting a CFO. Can we send you some candidates? Right? And, I mean,
I can't come to grips with that.
Yeah, you just fully cutting your candidate behaviour out. Yeah.
But endemic in our industry.
Yeah.
Absolutely endemic.
Do we get the ACCC involved and raise the standards and a royal commission?
I think somebody in the last time said, so what do I have to do to actually succeed? Delight your clients, do what you say you're going to do, and have them become your advocates.
You know what? We spoke about a couple of things earlier in this podcast around hang on, I've got this. There was two things I'm thinking of. It was telling new rookie people getting into the industry that it's all blue skies.
Yep.
Right? And I try and make a really strong effort to any recruiter, any person that I'm speaking to that wants to join Vendito, I basically tell them how shit recruitment can possibly be.
Yep. And
constantly saying, like, look, this is really hard. 70% of recruiters don't make it past their first 12 months. How does that make you feel? Do you still want the job? And try and bring a lot of fear and doubt and see what their reaction is. And one thing that I do mention, and I believe it's almost a blessing, but it's a curse at the same time, is because 90% of recruiters are generally not great. They don't take it like it's a career. It's like a job. It's a stop-in job from finding something else. Mm-hmm. And most of them are quite poor in their delivery and quality. It's almost like a blessing because if you just try a little bit harder and you take it seriously, you can really stand out as a superstar in recruitment and shine bright above a lot of recruiters by just taking it a bit more seriously. So it's kind of like a blessing, but it's a curse at the same time because lots of people don't take it seriously. They're quite, elementary with how they do things. But if you take it a bit more seriously, you do really well. So it's funny that you say basically something similar as a lot of recruiters just, they're not that great and, just call, how do you succeed? You just call people back and do what you say you're going to do. It seems like a really basic requirement and not something that you would attach to success in a position. It seems like it should be almost, the bare minimum, but in recruitment it seems like it might not be.
Well, and then if recruiters are unsuccessful in an agency, but they want to remain in recruitment, they go in-house.
Oh, that's going to be a big... That's, you know what, mate? That if you are trying to cause a controversy on LinkedIn, that is definitely the thing to say.
Why would somebody who is a very successful agency recruiter go in-house, earn a lot less money, have to deal with internal hiring managers who are absolute pains in the ass, often juggle 30-plus jobs at any one time? Why would a good recruiter do that?
Let's hear it. Has anyone got the answer to that question? Internal recruiters, comments below.
All right. Now, there are excellent internal recruiters.
Yeah.
Okay. Another mistake is that organisations, somebody has an HR degree, and so they see coming in as a recruiter as a pathway to being an HR generalist. In my opinion, recruitment is not HR.
Agreed.
Recruitment is sales.
Yep.
And, you know, I'll give you a specific example. So I was running a webinar to educate internal recruiters or HR people on how to recruit, you know, effectively. And I had an HR manager and her head of internal recruitment, or only internal recruiter, for an engineering consultancy firm in this call. So I said to them, okay, so what's going on for you at the moment? What's, you know, they said, look, we've got 40 mission critical roles and we can't fill them. And I go, okay, great. So first let's talk about the brief. So I talk about taking a brief and really eliciting, you know, what are the key deliverables of the role? What does success look like? Because how do you sell a job if you don't know what the actual job it is? I go, so do you take a brief to that level of detail? No. Look, the hiring manager probably gives us 5 minutes. They give us a PD and they say, go and fill the job. And then I go, okay, great. And so then when you advertise jobs, do you put your name and phone number on the ad? Oh, no, we don't do that. Why not? Well, because we just don't want candidates to ring us. And I go, you've got 40 mission critical roles, but you don't put your name and phone number on ad. So let's say a really good candidate who's not actively looking, but they see an ad, they go, oh, that role looks pretty interesting. I wouldn't mind knowing a bit more about that to decide whether I want to apply or not. Oh, there's nobody that I can ring. They don't apply. Yeah, look, I suppose. And then I say, okay, great. And then what else? Well, you know, a lot of the time, now this is last year, right? So this is recent. A lot of the times, by the time they're coming in for interview, they don't show up because they've found another job. I go, well, how long is it between when they apply and when you interview them? Oh, 4 weeks. And it's like, here is a CEO who has entrusted the recruitment of 40 mission critical roles in his or her business to an HR manager and a head of recruitment who can't take a brief, can't write an ad, can't expedite interviews, and yet they're still there.
How is that? How is this possible?
Mate,
what did you say to these people? Like, you guys need your head read, or?
Basically.
Yeah.
Well, not you need your head read, but look, here are the tools that can enable you to be far more successful.
Did they implement? Did you
No.
ever find out?
Not at all.
No.
Well, that's a great company to get jobs on with.
Well, I'll tell you, go on to see, right? And like, for example, do a search on General Manager Brisbane. I would almost guarantee you at least 9 out of 10 ads, no name or phone number. I mean, we're talking C-suite roles. I once saw an ad.
Oh, you can almost guarantee 0 companies that advertise have them on there.
I don't think I've
ever seen.
I see very rarely a company, not recruiters. Recruiters have always.
I'm talking in-house.
Direct companies advertising will almost never have a name, email, or number on their ad. And I think it's so. I always thought it was so recruiters don't call. But you're right, candidates can't fucking call either.
I gave a presentation to the Arete, Australian Human Resources Institute, and I was presented to about 300 HR people. And I said, you know, why don't you put your name and phone number on the ad? And one HR manager, she said, look, Richard, I know that we should, but I just don't want candidates to ring me. And it's like, well, get a different job. Or why don't you delegate that to a more junior person who can at least take the call? Because you look at these ads, they don't say what the salary is. They don't say what the size of the team is. They're just a regurgitation of a job position description that's absolutely crap. And the person goes, I don't know if that job, I'm not going to, and from a confidentiality point of view, why would I submit an application for a role with one of my competitors without even knowing what the role is? I'd love to ring somebody up. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely dumb.
But we're really grateful for it because it fuels our industry.
Yeah.
Well,
I love the dumbness. Don't teach them to put their names on the bottom of their ads, Richard. You don't want to do that.
So are there good internal recruiters? Sure. But if you look at internal recruiters who have come from being a third-party recruiter, what's their motivation?
What about like RPO?
Well, RPO is a bit different, I suppose, because whilst they might be working for, Bank of Queensland, if it's Corn Ferry, RPO, whatever they're called, it's a bit of a different situation. But even then, they don't put their name or phone numbers on it. So that's my immediate litmus test. It's like, if you don't put your name or phone number in an ad, particularly for a more senior role, okay, granted if it's a forklift driver. I saw an ad, for recruiting the chair of a very, very well-known ASX-listed company in Brisbane. The ad had, this is the chair, nobody's name or phone number, and it said on the ad, only successful candidates will be contacted. And you go, what damage is that doing to that organisation's brand as an employer of choice? I mean, irreparable.
Is it just ego from someone internally, or
it's laziness?
Laziness. Yeah.
So, does internal recruitment have a place? Absolutely. Can internal recruiters justify their existence? Of course they can, if they do their job well. It's the same thing with third-party recruiters. Going back, I don't know, this conversation is going a bit convoluted, but all you have to do to stand out from the crowd is just be happy and helpful. Return people's phone calls. As soon as I got into recruiting, I said, I will not leave my desk until I've returned every person's phone call, even if I'm here until 9 o'clock at night.
Do BD every day.
And do BD every day. If you're a 360 recruiter.
What's how did you get involved in the Brisbane Club, and what benefit does it bring? Have you seen a substantial? Because it's really, I find networking. Oh mate, I'm just not the person that's going to walk around a room and.
I'm not either.
No.
Mate,
huh?
You.
Maybe it's a skill I've developed.
Declan's always on my back. Oh, mate, come on, mate. You got to get around the room and introduce yourself to people, mate. We're here for a reason.
Yeah, because you just sit there stiff and nervous. But you've got to do it too.
Hey, you're the pretty face. I'm the brains, mate.
Increase it more. You've got to put an effort into it. It's not something I find direct.
Takes a lot of energy, mate.
Energy.
Heaps of energy.
Yeah, for sure. If I was tested, I'm an introvert. I think
we are too.
I've learned to be an extrovert.
Not you. I'm an introvert.
I've learned to be an extrovert, because for the requirements of my job. But if I had a choice between going to a networking function and working the room, here's my card, and or staying at home and with a good book and a glass of red wine, I'd much rather read the book and drink the wine.
Yeah.
But, anything like any kind of club, you only get out of it what you put into it. So, again, for an early careerist recruiter, I wouldn't think there's any value in them joining the Brisbane Club. You need to go and hang out. You need to go and fish where the fish are.
Do you reckon we could get a little...
You reckon we got a spot there?
Yeah. I'll refer you in. But
that's the only way you can get in.
Yeah, you got it. Well, you need, if you apply, your application, you need 4 referees. And again, I've been a member for, I don't know how long now, 12 years. But, I run all my events there. I'm a very active member of the club. because I deal at that level, at board level and CEO level, one of the best things I could say for anybody is to go and do something like Toastmasters.
Yeah.
I actually think doing Toastmasters way back in my earlier career was more valuable to me than doing a business degree. Learning how to speak, how to be articulate, how to structure. I remember, I used to get so frustrated because I learned my pitch, and I've pitched my pitch so many times that I am not even conscious of what's coming out of my mouth, which enables me to watch the cues from the person I'm pitching to. If I'm talking to a CEO about recruitment or about their career or whatever, I literally say the same thing in the same way at the same time almost every time. But you have to do your 10,000 hours. You got to learn your pitch and practice it over and over and over and over and over again. And that's what Toastmasters teaches you to do. You've got to give a 5 to 7 minute presentation without any notes. And then you learn the next skill, and then the next skill. I know so many recruiters who just don't know their pitch. So instead they're stumbling and mumbling and fumbling and bumbling, and because they're so caught up in, oh shit, what do I say next? They're not actually watching what the buying signals or getting the feedback from the person they're talking to. And yet it's such a fundamental 101. I mean, if you're going to make 50 marketing calls a week, you want to actually know what you're going to say. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. But again, it's that commitment to quality. The doctor, lawyer, accountant, and so on, they've done their 10,000 hours. They've done their degree. They've done their, they've gone in as a junior accountant and then become an associate accountant and then become a partner. Recruiters, it's like, come on, Mary, you'll be right. Yeah. And they just, and it's not that I think people are intentionally looking to cut corners or looking to be crap. I think it's just, it's an ignorance of what do I actually need to do. I can tell you right now, I've got a recruiter in my team, who earns more than most CEOs we recruit. Mid-30s. But she is committed to her craft, and being exceptional. If you want to be exceptional, you got to put the work in.
That's in front of the mirror, in the car, wherever you can, get the reps
Reading, listening to podcasts. Fantastic. As a recruiter, this is an amazing podcast to listen to. But what business podcasts are you listening to? I'm driving here, I was listening to the AFR podcast. I am regularly attending webinars. And last week I attended a webinar on, advanced LinkedIn Sales Navigator training. I watched, it was a 1 hour presentation. After 10 minutes, I had to turn it off because my brain was just so blown. It's like, holy crap, I can't watch the whole thing because I've already got 27 different ideas for my business, in the first 10 minutes. I mean, if you see what they're doing from an artificial intelligence,
the AI is crazy.
Far out, man. If you, it is absolutely incredible. You need to be aware of what's happening in business. So when you're in front of your hiring manager client, you're not just having a conversation, have you got any vacancies? You can actually talk to them what's happening in the industry, what's happening in their business, what's happening in their career, what's happening in the world. But it takes time. You don't get to that point by just being average.
Yep, I love that. And so, what's the future then for your business? You've been in the industry 30 years.
About 20 years.
20 years. Sorry, mate. I'm adding a decade on there. That's a bit
that's
rude.
That's because I started in my mid-30s instead of my mid-20s.
So what's the future for you now then? So are you planning to eventually I'm just trying to get in the minds of, other recruiters that are going through the journey of building their agency, potentially looking at exiting, selling their business, getting a manager on board, and having someone take over it. Like, what's the end game?
Well, I as we said earlier, a perm business doesn't have a lot of sale value. So unless you find either you build out a contracting business or you find other ways to have a recurring income model, HR consulting or whatever it might be, really a perm business is a lifestyle business. Mm-hmm. I make money and I use that money, but I know that if I was to sell, I wouldn't get any kind of multiples, or at least I don't think so. It is very challenging as a business owner who's very close to the business to bring in somebody. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm brought in this general manager because it allowed me to focus. But I've had many runs at that. I've kissed many frogs.
Yeah.
I hope some of them are listening. And finding somebody as an employee who has the same investment in doing the work and protecting your brand, very hard. Mm. So what do? How do you scale? I mean, my business is now at a point where I had a revenue target. We're close to achieving that. So I think my business will then just thrive at where it is.
Awesome.
I've previously had grander aspirations, but I'm 55. I can't manage poor performers. I have no tolerance. I'm too old and grumpy,
Mate,
so
I think we're the same.
Mate, you know what? That's funny that you say that, because I swear that's almost like what half my staff think now. They're like, "Oh, Blake, you just got a short temper these days." I'm like, no, I just can't be bothered putting on the mask. I'm like, oh, that's all good. All right, let's figure out a way to get that performance up. It's just like, mate, what are you doing? You're not doing the right thing. Come on, you got to do better.
And I think that often people go, and I've certainly been this person in the past, it's like, oh, screw this, I'll just go back to just doing it on my own. But the problem with doing it on your own is you can never go on holidays and you can never actually have a quality of life because you're doing the doing. So it's finding that nice sweet spot where you've got in my instance, a small, reliable, trustworthy, professional adult team so that I can do the things that I would prefer to do. But it's not so big that I'm spending my entire life putting out fires.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Mate, that's been really, really interesting. What do you reckon, Deck?
Yeah, mate,
got anything to add?
No, I think there's a lot that's been covered. There's not really much that hasn't.
Yeah. Big love, Trigsy. You know what, mate? That's going to stick in my head for a really long time. Well, big love, Trigsy. Thanks for joining us again on Confessions of a Podcast. Confessions of a Recruiter. It'd be nice to know where I'm podcasting from. Really appreciate you taking out the time, going through in more detail about what you do and how you do it. It's been pretty good.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And, I look forward to remaining part of your community, because I think that, the work that you're doing is excellent. It's highly needed. The quality of the material you're putting out there in the market is, spectacular. I saw that you guys are doing a Christmas cruise.
Are you coming?
I may well come
Mate.
along. Come on. So how many people you got going along to that?
I think we got 6 or 7 tickets sold.
What?
No, mate, there's like 30. We got 50. There'll be 58 in total.
Right.
But yeah, actually 6 or 7 have bought them.
Right.
Yeah, we've banked 6 or 7 tickets, but we've got 30 something that are lining up to do it.
That are locked in.
But I don't count my chickens before I hatch kind of thing. But it'll max out at 50, so it'll go over the next probably 2-3 weeks. I think it'll probably go pretty quickly.
Right.
So I'd imagine my best guess, I would imagine it might be 10, maybe 8 to 10 agencies with 3 or 4 staff,
right,
all doing their Christmas party together.
Okay.
Bringing along, whatever merch they've got. We'll have Sergio here with the camera, getting cool pictures, videos.
You'll be handing out $100 notes left.
Yeah, I'll be like...
we'll be networking all the GMs we know. Yeah.
We'll give you all the GMs in our back pocket.
For those awesome fee splits.
Yeah, those pitties. That's so good. Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you at the Christmas party.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trigsy.
Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.